Hey guys, the Network Berg here. Hope you're doing well. So in this video, we will be looking at what is VyOS or VyOS, and it's actually an amazing open source routing and firewall platform that you can use. There is a few quirks to it as well, but we'll be doing a short discussion just what it is exactly, and then I'll also show you how to install VyOS on a virtual machine so that you can lab with it, play around with it, and see what you also think about it. So please feel free to leave some comments on what you think about it. And thanks to the guys that suggested to me to actually look at the operating system. I actually love it. It's very fun. It's very reminiscent of something like Junos, and I've been enjoying it. So please, guys, if you have any other types of obscure type of networking things you'd like me to cover, feel free to drop a message and I might just do that. So let's get into the video. All right, so let's actually talk about VyOS and what it is. It is an open source piece of software. It does run AMD 64 and it works as a firewall and routing platform. Now, one of the biggest, I don't want to say drawbacks, but I know a lot of people that use stuff like pfSense and OpenSense. You'll see that this is CLI based and you'll freak out, but it's actually very intuitive. It's very easy to get running on it. I guess policy management is a little bit iffy when it is being done from the command line, but it works really well, and it's very similar to working on something like Junos. So if you can figure VyOS out, you'll be able to use Juniper routers no problem, and vice versa. If you come from a Juniper background, you'll be able to jump onto VyOS relatively quickly because the command structure is the same, looking at the configuration works the same, and everything just functions pretty similar. So it's really awesome. I enjoy working with it. Now let's just continue on. So the history of VyOS is it is actually a fork of something that was known as Vyata Core, which was a community edition, similar to how OpenSense and pfSense has their community editions. Although the community contributors felt that it was stagnating, and also the project was being bought over and being shuffled around everywhere, so they decided, hey, we're going to fork it and we're going to create our own thing, and this is going to be called VyOS. And that was initially released back in 2013 of December, and then they've just kept working on it. Now, I'm not listing each and every individual release here because there has been a few other ones, but I wanted to make important milestone notices here because when they released Crux, that was really when it was in its stride, because they added a lot of awesome features with that, and it was considered, let's say, one of their most stable builds. So Crux released in January of 2019, and then the current build is Equilius, which was released in December of 2021, which was last year. So it hasn't been around that long, but it's introduced even more features. You can do stuff like MPLS on it. You can do stuff like VRF on it as well. So you know, that already puts it a mile ahead of stuff like the Sense firewalls, because it gives you that additional layer of multi-tenancy when you need to add additional stuff. So you don't need multiple different boxes. You can have a single box with multiple different routing instances in it using advanced features, which is really cool. And then it does run off of Debian. So that is the operating system doing its magic in the background, just something to take note of. Here are some basic requirements, or the minimum recommended specs that you should have. So you can actually load this on some old computers as well, just as long as the computer obviously has a CPU. It's got at least 1 gig of memory. Anything less than 512 of meg memory will just not boot up, and you need at least 2 gig of storage. Now, it goes without saying, if you want to add more advanced features like BGP and running full routing tables and stuff, you're going to have to scale it a bit larger and add additional resources. So some more CPUs there and some additional memory, and storage even won't hurt. So scope it yourself accordingly. But that's what's nice about it, is when you load it onto 10, you can decide what you want on there, and also the VMs obviously. So scope accordingly. Now, there are various different use cases. You can put this in the enterprise as a router and firewall. It does work as an edge router for ISP networks. It does run ISIS on the latest builds from what I can see. So 1.4, the new dev build, like I've been checking ISIS on it, so that's pretty cool. It works as a cloud gateway as well, and it can work as a VPN gateway. Now, the platforms, like I said, it's AMD 64, but you can load this onto physical hardware. You can run this on a virtual machine, or you can deploy it to the cloud as well. So this can be on Azure and AWS. Now features, this is very feature rich. I actually recommend that you go onto the VyOS.io website and read through all of the features yourself, but in essence you gain a wide scope of networking features, firewalling features, VPN, network services, HA, and it is fully open source, which is awesome. And another point I want to make here that I didn't have any space for is automation is also pretty fluid on it. It's really nice. You can run local scripts on it with schedulers, you can use the API, or you can even connect using Ansible, and there is very many modules on Ansible that you can use to manage and configure your VyOS platform, which is so cool. And now finally, how do you get VyOS? Now this is where a lot of people get confused, and even I struggled understanding it correctly from the beginning, but at least I've mailed the VyOS guys, confirmed some details, and I just want to stress, firstly, there is a subscription model, but you're not forced into getting a subscription. The subscription more is there for ISPs and MSPs and, you know, the enterprise space where they need additional support perhaps, and also just to get the LTS images, the long-term support images that are pretty much bug-free and that you can deploy on large scale without having to worry about any issues. There is a nightly build or the rolling build that is completely free to everybody that you can use. The only thing is that does run currently the development build, and that is prone to bugs perhaps. So you probably don't want to put that on your production network, but it is a great place to lab with, or maybe put that in your home network and test it out just to see how it works. And then lastly, the big point I want to stress here is, since it is open source and since the source code is available on Git, you can actually build your own LTS image, your own long-term support image using that source code. And the VyOS guys are even nice enough to show you how to go about doing this. You can deploy it on a Docker container, or you can also build it from scratch. And there's so many different ways to get your own ISO running for this, that you can have an LTS image that you're not going to be cornered into a subscription for. So that is perfect for your small businesses, or even for your home connectivity. But on the other note is, when you do that, that is your image then belongs to you. It's no longer anything to do with VyOS. You're typically kind of going to be creating your own fork, so to speak. But that's pretty cool that you can get that LTS image using the source code. So something important to take note of. All right, so this is where I'm going to wrap off the presentation side. Let's quickly jump into the operating system, or actually install VyOS and get this running on a virtual network. All right, I'm on the VyOS website. It is vyos.io, and from here you will be able to read more about VyOS, see what it is, get the information, see the feature list, customer reviews, and the different type of use cases, and obviously some frequently asked questions that you can just get some more information about, which is great. I do highly recommend also going to the documentation. As you saw at the bottom page, there is a documentation. Open that up, docs.vyos.io. I recommend just pinning that or bookmarking it so that it's there for you to easily go to if you need to review anything. I'll mainly just be doing what is in the quick start guide, and not all of it. I'm just going to be basically showing you how to get your platform up and running, giving it some internet access, and then from there you can use the documentation to play around further. But what I do like about the documentation here is they do have configuration blueprints which work for very specific use cases as well. Because many times you guys will ask me, hey, how do you do this one specific thing? And it's very niche to sometimes make a video about this type of situations. But VyOS has these guides where you can do stuff like route-based redundant side-to-side VPN to Azure with BGP and IKE v2. And you can go in there and you can see exactly how to configure this stuff. So it's really nice. There's even load balancing, high availability, interview RF stuff. Really cool. I really like that. If we go into the quick start, like I said, this is what I'll be using to just showcase some very basic configuration and installation and image management. You can read more about that. There is the build VyOS, which I did put in the description in the presentation side, where it'll actually show you how you can build your own long-term service or support image so that you can effectively use VyOS as if it was a subscription base, but without the bugs. But I'd say for home use or small business use, I'd recommend. If you want to go a bit further, then I do suggest maybe getting the subscription if you are an ISP or a large MSP and you're looking just for that additional safety net. All right, so Let's get VyOS. So for that, all I'm going to do is go back to the website, scroll to the very top, go into the rolling release, and from here we can download one of the nightly builds. Now I already downloaded one of them, so I'll just use them to install that on my hypervisor, which is VMware, but you can deploy this to mostly any hypervisor really. So let's do that. I will just go onto my VMware. So let's install a new virtual machine. So all I'll do is new virtual machine. I'll use the typical install. I'll set this to install the operating system later. I'll set this for Linux, and it is Debian 10, 64-bit, which is the important part, is the 64-bit. Let's give the virtual machine a name, so I'll make this VyOS 3, because I already have 2 other instances. I can set the disk size, so for this I might just make it 8 gig, but remember the minimum specs was 2. And let's customize our hardware. And then very important, let's just push up the RAM a little bit. I'll make this 4 gig for me. I might give this additional cores on the processor. And let's set our ISO, which is going to be this VyOS nightly build that I downloaded, which runs the unofficial Sagita build, but that's 1.4 is the development build. And my network adapter, the first one will be a NATed adapter, so it can just connect to my hypervisor network and immediately get internet access out. So let's just add another adapter. And this I'm going to make a network adapter. And then this second network adapter, I'm going to set this for VMnet 19. Actually, let me make that VMnet 18. That will connect onto an Ubuntu VM that I have running in the background. And let's just apply this. So I can close this, finish the setup, and let's start up this VM. So I'll start up VyOS 3. And what's nice is this will actually load in a live state from the disk or the CD, so that you can actually kind of demo VyOS from the disk now. But we will do the actual install, so it is on my VM, so that when I restart I don't lose all of my configuration, because then it's not just running off of memory, so to speak. So let's just wait for this to boot up. Alright, your default login credentials are VyOS and BIOS. And to install VyOS, all you need to do is type install and image. I'll hit enter. I'll just continue with the prompts. I'll hit yes. I'll hit enter. And then it says where does one to install in the SDA. I'll say yes. And then it says it will destroy everything on this directory or drive. So I'll say yes. I'll manually type that. If you go no, it will stop the install. So let's just continue with these prompts. I'm basically just going to be hitting enter up until the point where it's finished. So it's still just busy with the setup. Type a password for the VyOS account. I'll just keep that as VyOS just for now. And now it asks me to reboot. So I'll just type reboot, hit enter. And now when it boots back up again, you'll already see it's not from disk. It will be from Linux. And now it's going to start up from the actual VM, which is nice. So I'll just skip forward with the video once this is done booted up. Alright, so I will log in with VyOS as my account. Password is VyOS. And now I'm going to do some very basic configuration from here, just so that I can access the device over PuTTY with SSH. So 2 very important steps for me now is I just want to add an address to my ETH0, which should be my WAN address. So what we'll do is we'll go into configure mode, and this is quite important. With VyOS, just like Cisco and Juniper, this is initially we're in a read mode, or like a log mode, you can say, to see configuration, but we can't change anything. To go into configuration mode, you type configure or config, hit enter, and it'll change to this dash. Now, if I just question mark this, you'll see there's additional context or stuff that you can do. It is important to note that you do need to commit your changes after you've made them for them to actually apply, and that you need to save your configuration so it can actually be loaded onto the startup configuration so that you don't lose that config after a reboot. But as you can see, the structure is very similar to Junos. You have your rollback command to go back, you have a compare to see what configuration changes have been made. So this is actually quite nice. So all that we're going to do now is firstly we're going to set our WAN interface. So I'll just do a set command. I'll say interface Ethernet ETH0. This is going to be an address I want to set, and I'm going to set this for DHCP, so it obtains an IP from my hypervisor. Then I will also just set interface Ethernet ETH0, give it a description of WAN. Now I need to commit the changes for it to actually affect, but before we commit, let's also just enable SSH quickly. So for that we'll do set service SSH port. We can make it 22. I just might make it 2202 because I like doing that. And if I type compare, this is what I was talking about. Here you can see the pluses will obviously show you what configuration has been added, and if there's a minus, it will show you what configuration has been removed or deleted, which is quite nice. So let's just commit this. And let's see if I can actually get to the device. Or let's see, do I have an IP? So I'll do an ifconfig ETH0. And I do see I have obtained an IP of 192.168.149.137 from my hypervisor. So I can use that address to just putty into it quickly. So 192.168.149.137. I'll connect on port 2202. And I should be able to get on. Although I think my Windows VM sometimes spazzes, or my Windows machine sometimes spazzes out. I don't know why this happens. So sorry if you see me doing this, but I find that this typically fixes this issue with getting to my VMs. So I'll just re-enable these interfaces, and then I should be able to get there now. Let's just see, can I ping it? 192.168.149.137. Okay, I can ping it. There we go. So my SSH works now. So let's just continue. Now it's asking me to log in as. This is going to be VyOS. Password will be VyOS. Alright, great. So we are in VyOS again, just through my putty window, which makes it look like I'm in the Matrix. This is so cool. So now let's set a few other basic details. So I did say I want this to be able to offer internet access to a network that lives behind it, our LAN network, which is going to be an Ubuntu VM. So for that, we just need to go back into configure mode. And then what we want to do is we want to set our interfaces Ethernet, and this will be ETH1, which is going to my Ubuntu VM. And then we can set the address for this to something. So I will make this 172.16.5.1/24. I'll hit enter. So now we have a static IP bound to the interface that's going to our virtual network for the Ubuntu VM. But let's add a few additional services. Maybe we want DHCP enabled so that the Ubuntu VM can just obtain an IP address automatically. So let's do a set service DHCP-server. We can set a shared network name, which will be LAN. We can specify a subnet, and that's going to be 172.16.5.1/0/24. And now with the subnet, we can specify certain details. So here I can hit enter, and this will now be the subnet. But let's add a few details. Maybe I want to set a lease. So that I'll make 86400. Maybe I want to set a name server. That I will make Google's name server. Maybe I want to set a domain. And that will be my domain name, which is going to be tmb.local. Maybe I want to set stuff like my default router. So what is the default gateway of the DHCP network, which is going to be 172.16.5.1. And maybe we also just want to set our IP pool. So for that, we can just do a, let me just see, I think it's range. And then we can give the range a number or a name. So this will just make range 0. This is the IP pool's name in essence. And I'll set a start. And the start will be 172.16.5.50. And I'm just going up arrow because the previous command statements are all true. I'm working with the shared network LAN subnet, what the subnet is. And then the range is now obviously our IP pool. And then our stop address is going to be 172.16.5.100. So this will be the IP pool. So if I do a compare here, I can see that I have added a DHCP server, and there's all of the details for that. So I can do a commit, and I can do a save. And then what I'd like to do is just jump onto that Ubuntu VM and see if I'm obtaining an IP address. So let's see that. Let's go tmb123. And what I'd like to do is just type ifconfig and see, am I getting an IP address? That is not the correct IP, so let's just quickly reconnect. So I'm just turning that off, reconnecting. And there we can see I have obtained an IP address of 172.16.5.50. So let's see, can I ping my default gateway 172.16.5.1? I can. But a question is, can I ping out to the internet? And that I cannot do. But the reason I can't do that is because I haven't set up any type of source NAT. I haven't actually given my LAN network away to get onto the internet. So let's quickly do that. So what I'll do is jump back onto the configuration, and I'll do a configure, although I'm already in the config mode, so I can just do a set NAT. And if I tab this, we can set a source NAT. We can say rule. We can give the rule a number, so I'll make this 100. Now we can specify some details here. I will set a source address, and that is going to be my LAN address. So 172.16.5.0/24. And then for my rule 100, I also want to set a outbound interface, which is going to be my WAN interface, which is ETH0. And then lastly, we also just want to set a translation method. So what is it going to do with this? We're going to translate this to something else. We're going to set the address. And now we have options of either setting this as a specific prefix, so you can, or an address, so you can set it as a specific NATed address, or we can masquerade, which will in essence just hide our LAN network's address behind whatever IP is bound to our WAN interface, which is pretty standard in the industry. I mean, you see people do masquerade rules a lot on Linux firewalls, or even on MikroTik's. Masquerade's not a weird thing. So let's just hit enter. Let's do a compare. And there we can see I have added my masquerade rule. So if I commit this and I save this and I go back to my Ubuntu VM, I should in theory now have internet. Let's just maximize this and see, can I ping out to Google? Yes, I can get out to Google now, and I can see my icon has changed to a connected network as well. So that is awesome. So I just quickly want to also go back onto the VyOS documentation, because this is where I'm going to end off the configuration side. But I do want you guys to at least go onto the docs, and you can follow along with the quick start, because I in essence based this video off of the quick start guide. Then you can do additional stuff like add firewall rules, and you can set specific services for rules like SSH access to the router, add some device hardening. And like I said, there are additional documentations here for more advanced things that you might want to do, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to bring the VM up into the network and give it internet access, so you can actually start labbing and play around with it, because it is really an awesome open source routing and firewall alternative to some of the bigger devices. Because let me go back onto the firewall, because if we look at the protocol list, you can see it does BFD, it does IGMP, it does ISIS, it does MPLS, it does layer 3 VPNs as well with the BGP. So this is sick. It does OSPF, OSPF v3 obviously, it does PIM, RIPNG is on here, I always say it wrong, RPKI, and then obviously your static routing. But you've got your different protocol options that you can set, and it's really advanced. This is not just some silly little router. This is proper industry standard stuff here. So I'd actually like to build off a few labs with this. I'm probably going to bring this onto Eve as well, on Eve NG, and just scale a big ISP backbone network almost, and see what I can achieve with the software. But I like what I'm seeing. I really think this is awesome. The only thing that I think that people might dislike about it is because it doesn't have a GUI. And I think that shouldn't be the reason why you don't like the operating system, because it works really well. My suggestion is just learn the command line. Get comfortable with it. Really, it works exactly like Junos. If you know Junos, this will be a cakewalk for you. If you're new to it, then this will obviously also give you a way to work your way into a way to get onto Juniper devices, so that if you ever work on a Juniper, then it's not going to be difficult for you. So that's what my takeaway from this is. I'm going to end off the video here. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I also want to thank all of my Patreon and YouTube members that help support the channel. It means the world to me. And you guys, the viewers, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. So thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.